Committee, joined by my colleague Monica Rodriguez. I understand there are no multiple item public comments or general public comments, so we shall close both hearings. Madam Council Member, without objection, I'd like to move items 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12 on consent. No objection. And I understand we have an amendment to item 11. Mr. Clerk, can you read item 11?
Item number 11 is a motion from Council Members Rodriguez and Bonin relative to allocating the CRA-LA excess non-housing bund proceeds to fund the Bradley Alley food kiosk project within the Pacoima Panorama City redevelopment project area.
Okay, that is the item before us. Madam Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a technical amendment that the motion should read $450,000 in both moving clauses instead of the $2 million that is listed.
Okay, so without objection, that matter will be amended as corrected. Thank you for that amendment. Okay, let's move on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst in response to the motion from Council Members Price, Martinez for Wesson, Koretz, Harris Dawson, Cedillo, and Rue relative to actions related to the Fair Work Week policy.
Okay, this is a very exciting policy initiative that several members of the council are bringing forward. At this time, we appreciate, obviously, the support, cooperation, collaboration with advocates, many of whom are with us this afternoon, and we appreciate your presence. We're going to ask a panel of experts to come forward to make some comments, and then we'll ask the CLA to offer some comments, and then we'll take your comments. And so if you've not signed up, please do so that we can make sure your voice is heard. But up first, we want to have three experts, 3 women who have been pioneers in this field and who have certainly bring a lot of interest and attention to it. Kristen Harknett from the University of San Francisco, Saba Wahid from the UCLA Labor Center, and Rachel Duch from the Center for Popular Democracy. Ladies, I'll let you present in whichever order you choose. Just tell us who you are.
Good afternoon. My name is Saba Wahid, and I'm the Research Director at the UCLA Labor Center. Today, I will present key findings from the report, Our Crisis, Unstable Schedules in the Los Angeles Retail Sector, released in 2018. This report is based on 818 surveys that we conducted in the city of frontline workers, so those that work on the floor, such as cashiers and stockers, at large chain retail stores. I will begin with an interview of the retail sector and then provide data on scheduling practices related to hours, notices, and schedule changes. I will end with the impact on worker lives. Los Angeles has a robust retail industry. It is the second largest employer in the county, and we have nearly 150,000 workers in the city. Nearly half of these workers are frontline workers. Since the 1970s, retail stores have increased their shopping time, which means it's requiring part-time and hourly staff and night shifts. Coupled with technology, workers are now expected to just be available. Our data highlights what scheduling looks like in stores today. First, 8 out of 10 workers do not have a set schedule. This means that the number of hours they work, which days of the week, and which shifts they work changes week by week. In fact, workers experience extreme severe fluctuations in their hours. 44% of workers note that their hours can change 10 or more hours in a week. That means that they could be scheduled 20 hours one week and then 10 the next. Schedule fluctuation means that workers' wages are constantly in flux. Workers also face insufficient hours. About half of retail workers would like to work more hours than they are currently scheduled. In fact, they'd like to be working 40 hours. And this is particularly true for part-time workers. Yet, 31% of workers report that stores hired new employees for shifts that they would have been willing to take on. Furthermore, workers don't receive advance notice, meaning the time between when you get your schedule and your actual shift. 77% of workers receive their schedule 1 week in advance or less, but for a quarter, it's just days before. And then 2/3 of the workers reported that the manager changes their schedule after it's posted, sometimes a day or two before the actual shift starts. What's more, 44% of retail workers surveyed have worked what we call clopening shifts. So you work the night before and then you work early the next morning. Most have less than 10 hours of sleep between those shifts. A major issue with clopening is the lack of adequate sleep, which can jeopardize a worker's health. 62% of workers are expected to have open availability, which means they make themselves available anytime, and then the manager can schedule them as they see fit. Having limited advance notice and last-minute scheduling changes aggravates issues of planning and work-life balance. Only a quarter of workers say that they regularly get the schedule that they want. In fact, 2/3 of workers report feeling overwhelmed and stressed by their work schedules. Since most retail workers are hourly workers, an unreliable schedule means an unstable income. And 1 in 2 workers were late in paying a bill. They were not making enough income to consistently cover their expenses. For the 16% who are parents, 40% encountered difficulties in paying for childcare. Non-standard hours also make it difficult to maintain family rituals, routines, and social activities. For parents, it can impact access to childcare, with almost half reporting that they are scheduled to work when traditional childcare programs are not available. For the 23% who are students, they said that they actually had to miss school because of a work scheduling priority. Our study attempts to capture the web of issues that follow from retail workers possessing little control over their schedules. Los Angeles should lead the way to ensure that workers have a good schedule, a schedule that gives them enough hours to make ends meet, one that is set and consistent so that they can plan their lives, one that allows them to care for their families, and a humane one that takes the worker into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up.
Thanks. My name is Kristen Harknett. I am a sociology professor at the University of California, San Francisco. Along with Danny Schneider from UC Berkeley, I co-direct the SHIFT project. For the past 3 years, the SHIFT project has spoken with workers and collected survey data from over 50,000 workers around the country at some of the nation's largest retail and food service employers. We appreciate the chance to share some of what we've learned with you today. We started our project because we know that for hourly workers, work schedules have a pervasive influence on lives. Our study documents on-the-ground work scheduling practices and how they matter for household financial security, worker health, and for child well-being. The 50,000 workers in our study have jobs at big box stores like Walmart or Target, at grocery stores, drugstores, fast food restaurants, and clothing stores. As Saba described in Los Angeles, in jobs like these, employers often rely on just-in-time scheduling practices in which the number and timing of work hours vary from day to day. We see prevalent short notice, on-call work, canceled shifts, and when we look separately by race and ethnicity, we see that workers of color are even more likely to experience work schedule instability. Overall, 75% of workers say that they would like a more stable and more predictable schedule than they have. As a professor and as a researcher, I have a lot of choice and a lot of autonomy in my schedule. And sometimes I do work at night or on weekends. But I can also choose to take time off to recharge or to spend time with my kids. But work in the service sector is very different. Nationally, the vast majority of workers in the service sector don't get to choose when they do and don't work, or the amount they work. And the vast majority have very little input into their schedules. Like in Saba's study, we find most workers are expected to have open availability. And when we speak with workers, they express the feeling that without open availability, they would not get hired and they wouldn't get put on the schedule. And in our national survey data, we see that 84% of workers say that their employer decides when they will start and stop work, with very little input from the workers themselves. When we spoke to workers, they described routine ups and downs in their work hours that meant ups and downs in their earnings. Tanya, a single mother, says her hours go up and down regularly, and so does the amount of her pay. Another single mother, Patricia, says she could literally get anywhere from 4 to 20 hours a week at her big box store where she works. Another mother, Maria, employed at a grocery store, sums up her schedule and says you never know if you're going to work 40 hours or 24 hours in a given week. The routine instability in schedules for service sector workers have widespread consequences for health and well-being and for children. In our study, we make comparisons among workers in retail and food service who have the same relatively low wages. And we see something striking, that those with short notice and ever-shifting schedules are twice as likely to go hungry as workers in the same sorts of jobs with the same sorts of pay, but with stable and predictable schedules. Many service sector workers nationally and in Los Angeles are parents. In Saba's study, I believe it's 1 in 3 Los Angeles workers are parents, meaning that schedules don't just affect workers, but also affect children. And in our study, in our national study, we find that working parents with irregular schedules are half as likely to have a daily meal with their children, and much less likely to be able to spend time reading with their kids or helping with homework. Working parents with unstable schedules rely more on complex childcare arrangements, and they also have to lean more heavily on young siblings to care for their children. And when parents have unstable schedules, we see that it affects their children's behavior. Parents with unstable schedules, their kids are more likely to exhibit withdrawn and anxious behavior, as well as to act out. Another striking finding from our study is that when we compare wages to schedules, as we do in our published work, we see that schedules have an even larger impact on workers' well-being than wages do. When we look at an increase in wages from $7.25 to $17.25, we see that that reduces workers' distress and it improves the quality of their sleep. But when we look at a move from the least stable schedules to the most stable schedules, we see far more dramatic improvements in terms of psychological distress, sleep, and other outcomes. So I'll end with 4 takeaways from our national research study on service sector workers. First, instability in work schedules is absolutely routine. It is the normative experience for workers in the service sector. These unstable schedules have consequences for workers, dramatic consequences, I would say, in terms of the risk of hunger, psychological distress, and poor sleep quality. Third, unstable schedules have consequences for children, for care arrangements, as well as for their behavior. And finally, the consequences of unstable schedules are even greater than the consequences of working a job with low wages. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Deutsch. I'm a supervising attorney with the Center for Popular Democracy. We're a national organization that works closely with local organizing groups. And our Fair Workweek initiative, which was launched in 2014, has provided expertise in work scheduling practices and Fair Workweek policy design to policymakers around the country. We are also providing technical assistance to enforcement agencies in the cities and states that have adopted Fair Workweek policies and are incorporating all of the lessons learned into our policy recommendations. So I want to complement the work that Saba and Kristen have presented by sharing a little bit more data about scheduling practices and impact on workers. The first point I want to make is that although you've heard that workers' schedules are very unpredictable, business needs are actually not. And you will probably hear from business leaders in the retail sector who will say that it's impossible to implement a Fair Workweek policy because customer demand is inherently unpredictable. In fact, data shows that total store hours are largely stable. One study looked at a clothing chain and saw that in the majority of stores, 80% of the total labor hours were actually consistent throughout the year. And the changes that do occur based on customer demand are often quite easy to forecast based on past data. So only 30% of changes to workers' schedules are actually attributable to changes in customer demand. The vast majority of changes in workers' schedules are due to operational failures on the part of corporate management. So things like failing to communicate a promotion, a sale or a product promotion, inaccurate information about product shipments. Those are the things that are most likely to cause changes in workers' schedules, and those are within corporate control. Second point I want to make is that rapid evolution in technology makes it easier than ever for employers to implement stable schedules and comply with Fair Workweek policies. All large retailers already use workforce management systems to generate their worker schedules automatically, and those systems are becoming ever more sophisticated and versatile. They allow employers to automate virtually any scheduling rule that they want to implement, and they also have smartphone apps that allow workers to swap shifts or allow employers to offer hours at the last minute. These workforce management systems also automate compliance with Fair Workweek policies. So for example, they could program the system to warn a manager when the automatic schedule has scheduled a worker for a clopening so that the manager can then ensure that the worker has adequate rest. And they make it possible to generate compliance data at the push of a button. So they can track when schedules are posted, when schedules have been changed, and who initiated a change, among other things. The third point I want to make is that there's a growing field of research showing that stable schedules actually reduce turnover, improve productivity, increase sales, and ultimately improve the business's bottom lines. So the Gap instituted an experiment in 2015 and 2016, shortly after the first Fair Workweek policy was adopted in San Francisco. In the first phase of the experiment, they eliminated on-call scheduling and went from providing only 3-day notices of schedule to 2 weeks notices of schedule. After just a short period of time, the evident positive impact was such that they rolled out those improvements around the country, and then did another experiment where they compared 19 stores that instituted stable schedules with 9 stores that didn't. So they were able to really compare and figure out what changes to the bottom line could be attributable to the stable scheduling. They found that the stores with stable schedules saw substantial improvements in sales, in profits, in labor productivity, and in retention of the more experienced workers who, under this intervention, were able to receive a guaranteed minimum number of hours. So for comparison, a lot of stores will be very excited to see a 1% to 2% increase in sales. These stores saw a 7% increase in sales during the period of this experiment. Managers also reported that they spent far less time managing schedules. They saw improvements to workers' morale and commitment and performance. Fair Workweek policies have been implemented in 6 cities in the state of Oregon, and these policies are being successfully enforced. New York City, for example, adopted a policy in 2017. They have conducted 134 investigations, executed 35 settlements, collected over $600,000 in restitution to 2,500 different workers. Seattle, similarly, has 20 investigations that have resulted in approximately $230,000 in restitution to workers. Finally, these policies are having a substantial positive impact on working families. You may have received some written testimony, I believe we tried to submit it from Anna Gassman-Pines and Elizabeth Ananat, who are sociologists at Duke, and they did a study to investigate the impact of the Fair Workweek policy adopted in the city of Emeryville, which is a smaller town in the Bay Area with a lot of retail. They were comparing the experiences of working parents before and after the policy was adopted. So in their baseline studies, they found that unstable work schedules, as Kristen was saying, cause significant stress and disruption to working parents, which then spills over to their children. Working parents reported a 50% increase in stress levels on days that they experienced a last-minute schedule change. When parents faced a shift cancellation, they reported a 50% increase in uncooperative behavior from their children. When researchers returned after the policy took effect, they found that even in the very early stages of enforcement, workers covered by the ordinance reported a 35% decrease in schedule instability. The last-minute schedule changes, which are particularly disruptive, fell by 50%, and workers reported substantial improvements in metrics of family well-being, including sleep quality and child behavior. So more and more data is showing not only how crucial stable schedules are for the well-being of workers and their families and their communities, but also that they are feasible and highly beneficial to businesses. So I thank the committee for your attention to this issue and happy to provide any additional technical assistance that may be useful.
Thank you. Thank you all for your research and for your attention and focus on this matter. Many of us certainly share the belief that making schedules stable provides stability across the platform, and so we're excited about that. Let me ask you, each of you, issues around enforcement. How has that been addressed in other cities, and what challenges do you see in moving forward with this policy?
With respect to enforcement specifically, I think that the thing that is most useful is to make it as clear as possible to workers what their rights are, to employers what their obligations are, and then to also take into mind the workload of enforcement staff. So, for example, there are many policies that the basic premise is you post the schedule in advance, and then for changes that occur after the schedule is posted, that there's an amount of compensation to the worker for being flexible. Or to ensure that if you have a shift that's canceled at the last minute, you're not losing that entire shift's worth of pay. Maybe you're losing half of that shift's worth of pay instead. And often the business community has really advocated for a range of exceptions where from their perspective it's really not fair to require them to pay even 1 hour's worth of wages to a worker for compensation for their flexibility because they perceive it as a legitimate business reason to make the schedule change or something like that. And one of the things that we've heard very often from enforcement staff is that each exception that you add complicates the enforcement picture. So that in addition to sort of looking at, is it fair in a certain circumstance to compensate workers, or is it not fair to require that compensation, it's also really helpful to think about the enforcement implications. Imagine that you're, an enforcement staffer and you're running through this long list of potential circumstances, each of which may have a number of different factual or evidentiary considerations. A streamlined sort of straight line rule of, any employer initiated change, there's a compensation element that's triggered, has been seen to be much more straightforward for compliance and for workers' awareness of their rights.
Okay. You mentioned the availability now of software to help track, monitor, even smartphone applications. Talk a little bit about that and how that has changed the perception and the ability to implement these kinds of programs.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since the very first Fair Workweek ordinances began to be adopted several years ago, the workforce management technology vendor community has reacted with great speed and innovation and are really trying to distinguish themselves on the basis of their ability to provide technology that supports compliance. So there's been tremendous innovation in this field, and there are even companies that provide customized modules for each city. So what we've seen is that the policies that are adopted in different places, for example, San Francisco versus Emeryville versus Seattle, are all at their core very similar, but may have certain differences. And there's a company that will provide a module for your, if you have a Gap store in San Francisco, you get this module, and if you have a Gap store in Los Angeles, you could have this module, and so it's already pre-designed to be in accordance with the different legal requirements in each place. Basically, these ordinances have been adopted with larger companies in mind because those larger companies have already all made the investment in this technology. We're not suggesting that you have to go out and buy a whole new program, but the reality is they're already being used, and they are now becoming more and more sophisticated in terms of being able to program the rules so that managers don't have to do a lot of work to come into compliance. The software largely automates it. And I think we'll continue to see innovation in that area, but it's already quite evolved.
Okay, good. Any other comments?
The only thing I'd add is that the open availability is really a burden for workers, and the workforce management innovations can and have included the opportunity for workers to provide input on when they absolutely cannot work and when they'd prefer not to work, so that a scheduling manager can then take that into account. So that's one of the features that I've seen that can address some of the practices that we've described.
Comments? Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Price. As you mentioned, in terms of the employer best practices, what has been some of the process of notifying the workers once these policies were adopted to inform them of what their legal rights are should they find that these new policies are not being enforced by that employer?
Well, most jurisdictions will require employers to provide some notice to employees of what their rights are. And in addition, we've seen a couple different practices. I mean, in New York City, they have subway ads that, reach people, a lot of people. One of the practices that's been really successful, I think, is grants to community organizations that are already working closely with retail workers that can go into the, whether it's a religious organization, a community organization, an ethnic organization, a health clinic, right? Meeting people where they are and saying, hey, do you work in retail? Do you know about this? Training people so that they can then go back to their store and educate their coworkers about their rights. Those are, I think, a combination of sort of broad information that sort of gets out there into the world, and then the targeted outreach, I think, is most effectively done by organizations on the ground.
But just in terms of because we're talking about larger scale, global companies versus like the small mom and pop,
right.
One-off restaurateur, how just making sure that we are very thoughtful about that communications piece. Have there been any, in terms of as this program has rolled out, what has been the most effective practice in your opinion? And moreover, because our enforcement agency has limited bandwidth, and to the extent possible to see the success of the implementation of this program, what are the mechanisms that you've seen kind of, so that people don't misconstrue thinking, well, I work for this, 5-seat restaurant.
Right. Well, yeah. I think, one thing that's helpful, I don't know if this is responsive to your question, providing some amount of compliance support technical assistance to the employers. At this point, many of these employers, if you would be covered by this in, Los Angeles, you're already complying with it in another city, right? Because we're talking about these large chains. So hopefully they're kind of able to anticipate. But I think, one thing that Seattle does, they have a sort of firewall where they have like a compliance, a person who's responsible for answering inquiries from employers, and then that person doesn't communicate to the enforcement staff, so that employers can feel free to come forward and say, is this policy compliant, without being worried that inquiry will result in an investigation. So I think there are a lot of different approaches that together can kind of help raise awareness and help people comply.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for your work and for your comments and for your testimony this this afternoon. We appreciate your input. We are going to receive public input, but before we do that, we're going to hear from the CLA to give us an overview on where we are with this initiative and what our next steps could possibly be.
Good afternoon. Felipe Chavez with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. Before you is a CLA report in response to motion Price, Wesson, Cedillo, Koretz, Harris-Dawson, and Rue. The motion proposes a city of LA policy that would require retail businesses with 300 or more employees globally to provide workers with the following protections: a good faith estimate of weekly work hours at the time of hire, a 14-day advance notice of work schedule, right to rest between shifts of 10 hours, predictability pay, anti-retaliation protections, more work hours to part-time employees before hiring new staff, among others. The motion instructs our office to conduct a review of fair work policies in other cities, and it also instructs BCA to report on procedures and costs and requests the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance. The report before you provides a review of Fair Work Week policies in San Francisco, Emeryville, San Jose, Seattle, and New York. All these policies were adopted within the last 5 or 6 years and require specified employers to provide various employee protections similar to the ones specified in the motion. Some of these protections include advance notice of work schedules and compensation for schedule changes, offering additional work hours to part-time employees before hiring new employees, right to rest, predictability pay, posting of requirements and employee rights, retaliation protection. The policies also include penalties to employers found in violation and compensation for affected employees. The CLA recommends that if the Council wishes to proceed with implementation of the Fair Work Week policy, that the Council instruct the Office of Wage Standards Bureau of Contract Administration to report with recommendations to implement a Fair Work Week policy, including types of protections for employees available in the cities reviewed by this office, procedures for implementation, a penalty system, and program and enforcement costs. And lastly, it requests the city attorney, with the assistance of the CLA and BCA, to be requested to draft a fair work ordinance as specified in the motion. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, so we are at the process of requesting the city attorney, CLA, to come back with a measure that outlines this fair employment policy. We are currently getting ideas, getting suggestions. We're going to be taking your comments from the public on their thoughts and ideas before we move this motion forward. Madam Rodriguez, any comments at this point? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to have public comment at this time. There are approximately 25 individuals who've expressed a desire to speak. You're going to have exactly 1 minute, and your ability to stick to that 1 minute, move forward, is going to help us move this item forward. So we'll begin. I'll call 3 or 4 at a time. If you just come to the table, and as I said, you'll have a minute. Rachel Reyes, Katrina Soto, Ashley Rudarte, and Zaita Zerulik. Kaita. Just introduce yourself and you may proceed.
I'll get it started. Hi, my name is Rachel Reyes, and I have been a manager with 2 international luxury retail brands for 3 years and a retail worker for 5 years. As I started advancing in my career, I decided that my management style would be as collaborative as possible, and proper scheduling is necessary to achieving a democratic work environment. I believe codifying fair scheduling practices into law is both a business and moral imperative. I have experienced managers who scheduled based off of favoritism or algorithms, and this has always negatively impacted sales and workplace morale. I can tell you for a fact it is entirely possible to schedule staff members fairly because I've done it before. All it takes is the desire to know and respect your employees. I have managed single parents, students, and people with multiple jobs. If you put in the work up front, creating a schedule that is collaborative and works for everybody top to bottom will work for the business. It improves mental health, it makes workers feel respected, and employees can tend to personal and professional pursuits. If we want to empower retail workers, we need a fair work week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Karina Soto, and I have worked at Staples in downtown LA for the past 7 years. In the time that I have been working at Staples, I have never had a set schedule. My hours have always varied week to week. This causes me a lot of unnecessary stress because I do not have a reliable income every week. Since it is difficult to plan ahead, sometimes that means I don't always have enough money to pay certain bills or afford groceries. I am also a student and I work a second job just to make ends meet. If I had my schedule 2 weeks in advance, I would be able to better plan my schoolwork and my second job. Currently, I only receive 1 to 2 day notice of my next schedule, which makes it really hard to study and sometimes spend time with my family. As a diabetic who also suffers from depression and anxiety, it's important to keep your mental and emotional health and stress levels in check. Unfortunately, the stress of not knowing my schedule and how many hours I will get has affected my health. We demand a fair workweek policy in the city so that all retail workers have reliable hours and schedules, not just to survive, but to thrive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Rudarte, and I am a retail worker and student athlete at Occidental College. It's been difficult balancing my retail job and my responsibilities as a student, which is why we need a fair workweek policy in LA. I've had to deal with stress from scheduling because I would often get my schedule 2 to 3 days in advance. Imagine if you didn't know when you would work until 2 days before. This made it really difficult for me to schedule time to study and have personal time with family and friends. Inconsistent hours, like having 7 hours one week and 24 hours the next week, caused a significant imbalance in my personal time and schoolwork. Worrying about my availability and potentially upsetting my manager also caused stress outside of my job. Inconsistent scheduling has significantly impacted my workplace stress and fragmented my time to study, train, relax, and do other work outside of my job. I support a fair work week because it allows people like me to lead more productive lives inside and outside of their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katya Zorolnik, and I'm a retail worker here in the city of Los Angeles. I work for a company that recognizes the value of a flexible work week, but it does not value the workers themselves. As an intermittent sales associate, I was asked to have a flexible schedule where I would remain on call for most of the week, also being regularly scheduled. In reality, my hours were cut, my pay never increased, and I was asked to come into work up to minutes before a shift started. If we are meant to work jobs, then jobs should be meant to work for us. An employee who is willing to work on an on-call schedule should be adequately compensated for their flexibility when their flexibility results in not receiving their expected number of hours. Many retail workers experience harassment from management, coworkers, and customers alike. It's not uncommon for stores to be understaffed, leaving workers to work by themselves, which further exposes them to harassment. We demand a fair work week policy to prevent unfair scheduling practices and to address sexual harassment in the retail industry.
Okay, thank you much for your comments. Next set of speakers. Justin Orkin, Jose Avendano, Daniel Cole, Alisa Harrison, David Rojas. You may begin.
I'll go ahead. Sure. Hi, my name is Justin, and I've worked at Target for 10 years. Fortunately, I'm a full-time worker, and I get the most out of my schedule, but I notice less consistency with my fellow workers, which can be better. Even though I'm a full-time employee, my hours are not necessarily consistent. I often work between 30 and 40 hours a week, but sometimes they can go under 20 hours, and without knowing when or for how long. It's this unknown factor which makes it difficult for many of my coworkers who can't afford to work under 20 hours even if it's for only 2 weeks. Because there is no standardization, I see many of my coworkers struggling with hours and schedules. If we are full-time and have put hard work into the company to be categorized as such, then we deserve to have hours that are more reliable. This should be seen by employers as part of a benefit for being full-time. Without this benefit, as I see often, employers have difficulty retaining workers with erratic schedules causing high turnover rates. Let's help employers keep the quality workers by listening to their employees' needs. We demand a fair working policy so schedules can be more consistent.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Avendano, and I am a retail worker representing the nonprofit organization National Council of Jewish Women. I am an assistant manager at one of the thrift shops that they own. There are many retail workers that struggle with on-call, unpredictable scheduling, and underemployment. Many employers also keep employees part-time to deter their access to benefits. These naturally hinder workers' personal enrichment and even a sustainable subsistence. Succeeding in college or even access to child care services are proved beyond arduous with the inconsiderate scheduling practices for many employers. As an assistant manager, I do my best to create schedules that promote strong work commitment and healthy life stability. If we can implement fair workweek practices and schedules at our stores, then large corporations can most certainly do the same. We demand a fair workweek policy in Los Angeles so that all Angelinos can thrive in our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Rojas, and I'm a member leader of USCW 21 in Washington State. I work as a grocery clerk for the grocery chain Fred Meyer's. As someone who grew up in Los Angeles, I'm thrilled to be here to testify in support of benefits of a strong, secure schedule law in my hometown. In 2016, Seattle passed a secured scheduling law, and at that time I worked in Seattle store that was covered by the law. The consistency and predictability this law provided was a huge relief to me. I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and having regular sleep schedule is a critical piece of maintaining my mental health. With an unpredictable schedule, I was not able to give myself care I needed. My mental health suffered as a result from my physical health, and suffered so did my quality of work. Because secured scheduling means so much to me, I spent this year at stores talking to my fellow members about the struggles they faced with scheduling an effort to pass secured scheduling statewide. What I learned was that I was not alone in having to deal with an erratic schedule practices. We collected hundreds of members' stories about the impacts of the current retail practices. I got this for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Coes. I'm a retail worker here in the city of Los Angeles for the past 27 years. I worked at different Walmart stores in the city of LA. My store, we do not get our schedule 2 weeks in advance. Walmart also frequently changes our schedule at the last minute. This makes it very difficult to plan our life. Also, we will get to work. Like many retail workers, I use the public transportation to get to work. My traveling needs to plan ahead of time. An unstable schedule makes it extremely difficult even to get to work, which puts me in a similar situation, workers at risk being disciplined or terminated. We demand a fair work week policy because we need our schedule and the timing and make plans in our schedule that we need to be able to make more consistent so that we can get to work on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Alyssa Harrison, Dakota Witt, Alice Berlinder, Jenny Galvez, and Justin McBride. All right.
To start on this side?
You may.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alice Berliner, and I am the coordinator with the Southern California Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. SoCal COSH is here in support of the Fair Workweek Ordinance. Retail workers can attest, as you've heard today, to the negative effects unpredictable and unstable schedules have on their health. For example, unfair scheduling practices such as clopening eat into workers' sleep time. As a result, their response times are compromised and become shorter. They are more likely to get sick due to stress and exhaustion, and their psychological well-being is at risk. Unpredictable schedules also force retail workers to work quickly. Due due to inconsistent staffing, causing additional stress and increasing the likelihood for occupational injuries. If retail companies in our city really do care about the health, safety, and wellness of the workers employed in the city's second largest industry, then a fair work week should be a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin McBride. I'm a doctoral student in the urban planning program at UCLA. In the winter, a group of students and I did a sectoral analysis project on retail work in the city of Los Angeles with the focus on retail malls. And if you look at the news or the media, you hear about a retail apocalypse and how retail is over because of e-commerce. Our finding is actually in the city of LA that retail work is relatively healthy and well, and that successful retailers are coping with the e-commerce revolution. And they do it by incorporating new ways of buying, but also by refurbishing stores. So retail malls in the city of LA are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in refurbishing their properties. They see a future in this industry, and our assessment was that the industry is stable here in LA as well. The second highest volume of sales per square foot in any mall in the country is right here in the city of LA, and many other malls see a bright future as well. So we wanted to share that with you today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Galvez, and I'm the director of the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute, which is a part of the LA Community College District. I'm also a faculty member with the LA Community College Faculty Guild. I'm here to speak on the importance of providing retail workers, including those that work and go to school, with adequate scheduling, allowing them to plan adequately and adjust their lives to promote success, specifically academic success and completion. For students, having stable schedules is critical for their own professional growth. When companies ask them to keep open availability in their work schedules or to be ready on demand to work hours that conflict with their classes, student grades and the quality of work suffer. Out of fear of retaliation for refusing to work or simply needing more hours to cover their bills, students unwillingly miss long periods of instructional time or step out of school completely. No one should be forced to choose between going to class or bettering themselves and their future by picking up involuntary shifts. We strongly urge you to stand up for retail workers and students and support a fair work week ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dakota Witt, and I'm an organizer with the ACLU of Southern California, and I'm here today with 5 of my colleagues to support the Fair Work Week Ordinance. We have submitted a letter to you today on behalf of 12 gender equity and reproductive justice organizations because the Fair Work Week Ordinance is not just critical to advancing economic justice in LA, but it's also necessary to address sexual harassment and gender discrimination in the workplace. At the ACLU, we often represent workers who've suffered sexual harassment and gender discrimination at work. We hear from them and from many others that sexual harassment runs rampant when there's a huge power imbalance between the harasser and the target of the harassment. At work, a supervisor already has power over the work you do and the way you do it. But we have talked to many women who have told us that the way supervisors often abuse their power is by using scheduling as a form of threat or retaliation. For example, a woman may receive fewer hours, an erratic schedule, or a back-to-back closing and opening shift after rejecting a supervisor's advancements. We urge you to direct the City Council to draft a Fair Work Week policy so we can work together towards more equitable workplaces free of sexual harassment and gender discrimination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Eli Longnecker, Jill Thompson, Edgar Ortiz, Andrea Lopez.
Good afternoon. My name is Eli Longnecker, and I'm the coordinator of the Los Angeles Worker Center Network. I'm also here in support of the Fair Work Week Ordinance. We know that unpredictable scheduling is commonplace in the retail sector. According to a 2018 study conducted by the UCLA Labor Center and Lane, 80% of retail workers do not have set schedules. 77% of retail workers get 1 week or less advance notice of their schedules. We know that unfair and irregular scheduling practices are an unacknowledged form of wage theft, which we typically think of as failure to pay the minimum wage or overtime wages, for example. Lost hours are lost wages, which exacerbates economic insecurity. Working people become vulnerable to hunger and/or homelessness when they cannot plan around a set income. All retail workers deserve fair schedules that promote social and economic security. We strongly urge you to stand with retail workers and support a fair work week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Thompson. I'm an attorney and I'm the director of the Women and Girls' Rights Project at Public Counsel. Our project provides free legal services to women working in low-wage jobs, the majority of whom are women of color, single moms, and the primary breadwinners for their families. Having a predictable schedule and a reliable paycheck is something that many of us in the city take for granted, but that is not the reality for the women that we serve. For these workers, constantly fluctuating schedules means a constant struggle to find childcare. Regular licensed daycare is not an option for them because it requires families to commit to certain time slots. And instead, parents have to scramble, sometimes at the very last minute, to find neighbors, family members, or even their other children to watch their kids while they go to work. And this lack of stable care is not only stressful for parents, it deprives children of quality care and the continuity that they need to develop and thrive. And we've also seen how unpredictable schedules and unstable paychecks trap young women in low-wage jobs. So we urge you to make working women a priority and to support the Fair Workweek Ordinance in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Edgar Ortiz, and I'm a research and policy analyst with the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. Our organization has been active within the Fair Workweek LA Coalition in reaching out to the community and educating them about the importance of fair and just scheduling for retail workers. Thus far, our conversations with hundreds of retail workers, 8 neighborhood councils, 42 community organizations, and 8 Democratic clubs across the city of LA span from Glasso Park in the north to Wilmington in the south, and from Pacoima in the west to Boyle Heights in the east. Thus far, nearly 60 organizations have come out and endorsed a fair work week for the tens of thousands of retail workers in the city of Los Angeles. We're here today to let you know that retail workers are not alone and that a diverse and justice-oriented community stands with them and the support for fair scheduling for retail workers. We urge your vote to move a fair work week ordinance forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Andrea Lopez, and I am the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator for Para los Niños. Para los Niños offers a wide range of high-quality coordinated student and community services, including 3 charter schools, 7 early education centers, mental health and family support services, workforce development, and parent and community engagement. We are here to speak in favor of the Fair Work Week ordinance. We currently have 14 sites across the city where we serve over 6,000 children, youth, and families a year, and the average income of the families we serve is less than $25,000 a year. In the downtown Skid Row area of Los Angeles, we have families who start with us in diapers and transition to our elementary school and go on to our middle schools. Most of the families that send their children to Para los Niños work in the retail industry, garment district, produce marts, and such. We are here. These issues are made even worse. These issues are made even worse by unfair scheduling when parents have to work non-standard and unpredictable schedules. They end up missing out on valuable bonding time with their children. This is very disruptive not only for their lives, but their children's health. Research suggests that children who are away from their parents due to work scheduling issues experience long-term learning, sensory perception, and memory issues. On behalf of the children, youth, and families we serve, we urge the City Council to stand with retail workers and their families to support this ordinance that provides fair and just scheduling. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. Marilou Rivera, Armando Flores, Michael Shieldstone, and Elizabeth Wall. Who's up? Marilou?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Wally. I'm here on behalf of the Food Chain Workers Alliance with 2 of my colleagues today. We're a binational coalition of unions and worker centers representing workers throughout food systems in the U.S. and Canada. Our LA members include UFCW Local 770, the Restaurant Opportunity Center of LA, the Warehouse Worker Resource Center, Teamsters Local 63, and United for Respect. I'm here to support the Fair Workweek ordinance. One of the foundational values of the Food Chain Workers Alliance is racial justice, and discrimination against workers of color in retail is common. Black and Latinx workers are disproportionately represented in cashier positions, which are among the lowest paid and the most unpredictably scheduled positions. All of this then negatively impacts Black and Latinx workers from being able to provide a stable income for themselves and their families. Workers deserve fair schedules that ensure that they and their families are socially and economically secure. We strongly urge you to support the Fair Workweek ordinance. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Armando Flores with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA. VICA has reached out asking to work actively with the authors to make this a proposal that works both for employees and employers. There is value in the flexibility that employers are currently able to provide. Punitive measures for updating the schedule after it has been posted would end up harming employees who have other commitments. For example, parents whose kids who have school events or other events for their kids often don't find out about these events until a few days before. Employees would need to make the choice either to skip work, losing pay and hurting business, or miss other important events and opportunities. While we are not opposed to a requirement to post the schedule 2 weeks in advance, we need to make sure that there is a provision for employers to make reasonable schedule changes in response to employee needs or unforeseen business issues, especially when employees actually want the hours. We suggest that the City Council and other city departments undertake a pilot project with all city employees, except public safety officers. Many city departments have similar operational challenges as retailers, including the need for consistent coverage, customer satisfaction, and fluctuating demand. We urge you to work with us, and as this moves forward, we thank you for allowing us to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for comments.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Shellstone with Central City Association. We appreciate the city's efforts to provide more opportunity and certainty for retail workers. We would like clarity regarding how retail will be defined and what the scope of this policy will be. The nature of hourly work is fluid as business demand fluctuates and workers' personal needs and commitments can change. Any scheduling system should provide clear and flexible rules in a way that works for both employees and employers. This is especially true for jobs in the service industry, including restaurants and hotels. Additionally, we believe it is important to have a thoughtful monitoring and enforcement system in place that is straightforward and does not overburden workers or employers. We welcome the opportunity for the city to meet with our members to further discuss and collaborate on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Valdivia, and I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles, and I'm here in support of the Fair Workweek policy. The League is an organization that advocates for public policy issues that promote positive solutions for the city of LA. We hold our local elected officials accountable to the constituents they represent, and today, council members, we urge you to take action because fair scheduling practices can make a real difference in the lives of working families. Over half of the retail workers are women. Women bear the brunt of unfair scheduling practices and low-wage jobs, and because women are more likely to be single parents and the primary caregivers of their families, the combination of unstable work schedules, low wages, and insufficient hours deprive women of the opportunity and availability to provide for their families. Offer women the opportunity to secure pay and benefits that they deserve, because fair work schedules can make a significant difference in the lives of working families that you represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, again, we've got Manuel Villanueva, Marilou Rivera, Jessica Maus, Olivia Lee, Elisa Harrison, and Laura Orantes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Manuel Villanueva, and I'm the lead organizer for the Restaurant Opportunity Center. We're a nationwide organization. Our mission is to improve the livelihood of restaurant workers across the nation. And we've been working in Los Angeles for restaurant workers for over a decade. I want to tell you about the two roads of profitability here in Los Angeles. The hybrid restaurants that provide They're a good source of good jobs, better paying jobs, path for advancement in the industry, health benefits, and the ones that take the low road, profitability, they means the creation of low-wage work, long hours, few benefits, and exposure to dangerous and often unlawful workplace conditions. In Los Angeles, the historical discrimination of residential segregation and poor transportation options are compounded in the current structural inequities and discrimination in the restaurant industry. For example, workers of color are often employed on with low-road employers. So we urge you to please support the Fair Work Week because work is needed. They live outside of the main areas of their work.
All right.
And it takes them a long time to get to work and go to work afterward.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Orantes, and I work for Rudarte in South LA. I have worked for Rudarte for over 30 years. Until this day, I still experience unfair scheduling. Working erratic shifts has affected my health and well-being. I have never been able to establish a healthy sleep schedule because I could never go to sleep at the same time. Some days you work in the morning shift, and other days you get off from work really late at night, like I did this morning, 1 a.m. You never get used to it. Because of our union, UFCW Local 770, we have many protections that non-union workers do not have, including guaranteed minimum hours and paid health benefits. We do get notice of our schedules on Wednesdays of the prior week, but more notice will be better. It will make our lives so much easier if we get a schedule 2 weeks in advance. I still struggle with planning my life around my work schedule, even after having worked for the company for over 30 years. At the end of the day, management still has control of the schedule. We demand a Fair Work Week policy in Los Angeles for retail workers like myself, the few generations to come, that can not only plan their lives, but also lead healthy lives.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Jessica Moss with the California Grocers Association. Most grocers provide advance notice of schedules with minimum fluctuation in amount of and timing of hours. This allows employees predictability within a flexible system. While they know their approximate schedule, they can also request changes within a short amount of time. We are concerned that the proposed ordinance seems to single out specific industries without reason, including the grocery industry. However, we look forward to expanding on this conversation with you and the rest of the council as more details are fleshed out. With regard to other ordinances and other municipalities, sometimes we've seen that this type of restricting scheduling can penalize businesses that work with employees who need to swap or reschedule shifts for any reason once a schedule has been posted, discourage businesses from granting employee requests for additional hours once a schedule is posted, force employees to request time off 3 to 4 weeks in advance, which can sometimes be an unrealistic expectation, and leave employees with fewer options to pick up additional hours and shifts if they so desire. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Harrison, and I used to work at the Whole Foods Market in downtown LA. And after I spoke out about full-time employees having their hours cut down to part-time, I was interrogated about the LA Times article by the store manager and a Whole Foods corporate official. And the questions asked made me feel like I was under scrutiny. And so I left shortly after that. And however, the issue of unfair scheduling has followed me. And so that is why I continue to fight for this policy. This policy, Fair Work Week, wants to grant workers the freedom to voice concerns about scheduling without the fear of retaliation, of the freedom to better plan our budgets and therefore our lives. And it is simply asking to obligate employers to adhere to their contracts, their promise of full-time work and financial stability for their employees.
Okay, thank you. Two final speakers, Marilou Rivera and Olivia Lee.
Good afternoon, Olivia Liu, the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. Though the current motion before us has limited details, the Chamber has been working with our members to put together best practices and challenges on this particular item so we can be active participants in crafting this policy. We understand that there are challenges for both businesses and employees on predictive scheduling, and we hope to work with you to develop a policy that works for all stakeholders while enabling the flexibility that employees often want and businesses need to operate. While well-intentioned, predictive scheduling can end up being too restrictive, preventing businesses from adapting to fluctuating labor needs and offering extra shifts that would increase earnings for employees and preventing workers from being able to accommodate changing school or child care schedules. We look forward to engaging with you and your staff on a solution that works for both employers and employees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments? Okay, we've got one question. We're going to close the public comment, and one question from Councilwoman Rodriguez of the CLA.
CLA.
Here he is.
Hi, I just had a quick question about the definition of retail and what that looks like when it comes into our draft ordinance and what we're going to align that to in terms of comparables. What is comparable when we talk about retail so that we're very clear about the impacts of which industry and which businesses are affected by this policy.
We're actually looking forward to BCA coming up with definitions for that.
Okay.
And they will be defining retail. Okay. What I do know is that it doesn't include the restaurant industry at this time.
Okay. But just in terms of, like, for example, amusement parks, just in terms of what that might potentially...
In some cases, it could include services.
Got it.
But it's all dependent on, what direction the council wants to take it. So if you have some feedback and some recommendations, we would definitely take those.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only question.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. I want to thank everyone here for their testimony, pro and con. If approved, the Fair Work Week policy would positively impact some 150,000 retail workers in Los Angeles. Now, we want this, of course, to be a collaborative process. So this is input from workers, input from businesses, input from agencies. We want to make sure this is a well-grounded policy that meets the needs in our community specifically. So again, I just appreciate the input. As I said before, when we work to advance the city's minimum wage policy, I've heard from lots of folks who indicated that raising the wage is good, but that doesn't mean anything about income security if we're not getting enough hours. And so hopefully, this Fair Work Week approach is something that will meet the needs of not only workers but also of businesses. And so we're happy to move this discussion forward. Without objection, Councilwoman, we're going to approve the CLA recommendations, which include instructing the Office of Wage Standards Bureau of Contract Administration to report with recommendations to implement a Fair Work Week policy, including the types of protections for employees available in cities reviewed by the office, procedures for implementation, a penalty system, and a program and enforcement with costs. And we also request the city attorney, with the assistance of CLA and BCA, to prepare and present a draft Fair Work Week ordinance as described in the motion authored by Price, Wesson, et al. And if there are no other objections, that will be the order. Okay. So thank you all for your presence this afternoon. There's still a lot of work to be done, and so we look forward to your input, your ideas, your suggestions as we move forward collaboratively to craft a policy that makes sense for our community. Thank you. Okay, well, if you could exit quietly, please. We still have some business before us. Mr. Clerk, what is next on our item?
Next is item number 4, which is a report from the city clerk relative to the Chatsworth Merchant-Based Business Improvement District administrative contract.
Yeah. Okay, we thought this was going out on consent. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that'll be item item 5.
So item number 4
Item 5.
is approved on consent.
4 is out on consent, I'm sorry, yes. Item 5.
Okay. Item number 5 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the ACOM Hotel Development Incentive Agreement.
All right, item 5. Okay.
Good afternoon, committee members. Andy Galan with the Office of the...
You want to pull that microphone up a little closer?
Andy Galan with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. Before you is a report relative to the Hotel Development Incentive Agreement for the ACOM Hotel. The ACOM Hotel is a proposed 16-story, 258-room hotel project located at 155 South Olive Street, within walking distance of the convention center. Our office was authorized to negotiate a final agreement with the developer in accordance with the MOU approved by the council on April 30th of this year. The HDI attached to the report before you complies with all of the provisions of that MOU and does not deviate from them. In accordance with the independent review performed by RSG and the MOU, the HDIA includes the following key terms: an agreement period of 25 years, financial assistance of $17,301,000 net present value with financial assistance made annually following project completion, provision of community benefits package following by the developer, provision of a room block agreement for support of the convention center, compliance with ADA requirements and a CAS review, and a post-construction cost reconciliation. The City Administrative Officer, the Bureau of Contract Administration, and the Economic and Workforce Development Department will all provide oversight for various aspects of the contract. Also attached to the report is the state-mandated 5383 report, and I'm available for any questions if necessary.
Is the agreement in line with the city's hotel incentive agreements that we've previously approved?
Yes, it does. The report previously released by my office evaluated the project to ensure that it was in compliance with all city policy.
And will this project help us achieve our goal of having enough hotel rooms within walking distance of the convention center by
it will
2020?
Yes, it will contribute to that goal, including the approval from this project. There will be approximately 7,239 rooms supporting the convention center. About 1,881 rooms are currently proposed. That would put us over our 8,000 room policy goal.
Oh, great.
And John Wickham with the CLA's office, just to add on to that, the council had instructed us to evaluate that 8,000 room goal. And so as part of the convention center expansion project, we are looking at that. We will be coming back to you with further analysis. But this project absolutely fits within that 8,000 room goal and helps us achieve that, which is part of really an astonishing economic development program that the council and the mayor have implemented here.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Rodriguez, any comments? Hearing none, we will approve the CLA report recommendations. We do have one comment from Michael Shilstone. Thank you, Michael, for being so patient.
Afternoon again. I'm Michael Shilstone with Central City Association. We're strongly supportive of the proposed hotel development for 1155 South Olive Street. the South Park neighborhood of downtown. The project will replace a surface parking lot with 243 hotel rooms and active ground floor retail and restaurant space just a few blocks from the Convention Center, Staples Center, and LA Live. Adding these hotel rooms would further the city's progress in making Los Angeles among the most competitive convention destinations in the country and would bolster our tourism industry, a cornerstone of the city's economy. AECOM and MAC Real Estate have already invested in several residential developments in the area, and this project is another sign of their commitment to the future of downtown and the city. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments. Seeing no other comments, we'll close the comments at this time and without objection approve the CLA report recommendations as presented. Last item.
I believe that's all the items, Mr. Chair.
Are we done? I thought we were.
I think so.
Okay. Life is good when you're. No, we don't. I guess we don't have to. Item 6 was approved as presented without approval. Yeah. Okay. Let's reconsider bringing it back. Yeah. Let's reconsider 6. All right. No. It's going to be quick. Okay, go ahead. We're just going to reconsider 6. Let's read that, please.
Yes, item number 6 is a report from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the update regarding design and development for the expansion of the Los Angeles Convention Center.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. As you know, Council instructed us to evaluate proposal to expand and modernize the Convention Center. We are currently in negotiations with AEG on this matter. As a result of those negotiations, we've identified a few items that we wanted to bring to your attention and request authorization to ensure that we can move forward efficiently. One is that AEG is actually in partnership with a company called Plenary, and the ENA needs to be revised to allow the joint partnership of AEG and Plenary to move forward. And so we've asked for authorization to make that change to the ENA. In addition, there may be, we haven't determined yet, but there may be a need for some ordinances with regard to procurement. The city attorney is evaluating this, and in all abundance of caution, in order to move forward quickly, we wanted to make sure that there was an instruction for the city attorney to have authority to prepare those ordinances and bring them forward as needed. Okay. And then finally, we've identified a few negotiation terms that we wanted to bring to your attention. One is that AEG and Plenary have proposed doing self-maintenance, that they would perform the maintenance of all elements of the project at the end of the day, and that was not originally considered. And so we just wanted to bring that to your attention that they would that they've proposed to do that, and we are evaluating that proposal and may bring that forward to you. And finally, in terms of cost savings, we've been looking at parking alternatives. We originally thought that we would tear down the Cherry Street garage and rebuild that with a much bigger garage. Our concern is that that adds extensive costs to the project, and we are evaluating other proposals in order to bring cost savings to the project that also will make sure that we serve the community, the campus, the attendees at the convention center. So we want to bring this all to your attention and have asked for authority to.
We appreciate that, and without any objection being raised by my colleague, we will accept that report and the recommendations as presented. Thank you. Anything else before us, Mr.
No, as we close general public comment at the beginning.
Yes, we did. We closed general public comment.
The desk is clear.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.